welcome to the first post roundtable discussion of the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. And it's going to be a little bit different what we're doing this evening, but let me explain a bit about who I am. Although many of you know, I'm Suzanne Mitchell. I'm one of the board members of Rivertown Film and also the president of ROSA, which stands for Ramapo Organized for Sustainability and a Safe Aquifer. ROSA actually initiated this film festival 7 years ago, and with the help of Rivertown, have continued to maintain it. And we're so excited because that we're able now, probably because of COVID, to actually host this type of roundtable discussion where we normally would have had to have everybody come back to a theater setting. So in one sense, we didn't get to sit in the theater for Wild and Scenic this year, but we all get to do this afterwards. So I'm excited by that. I'm joined by Susan Shapiro. Susan, many of you know, is not only an environmental attorney, but she's very active in helping get Indian Point shut down, as well as she is an organic farmer and a filmmaker. So, and a painter. She does it all. So she'll be helping me MC this evening. There are a number of partner organizations that are on this Zoom meeting this evening. Everybody will get to meet each one of the people who are joining us from that partner organization. I'm not going to read off everybody's names. People will identify themselves after I ask a first question. There will be 2 questions. Each partner organization will get a chance to answer those 2 questions, and then we're going to open it up to the floor for everybody to get involved. Ask the hard questions. We live in this community. We want to know what we can do to help create a better environment for everyone. To ask a question, there is there's 2 things. There's a chat button where you can ask on the side, and then you should see something where you can raise your hand. You could also physically raise your hand, but if you raise it at the lower portion of the screen, we will get to you, I promise. Susan's going to help me look at all the screens and make sure that this flows. The third question will come at the end, and that's when I will just we'll do a power round of words before we sign off. We're going to try to maintain this program for 1 hour. So at about 8 o'clock, we will be wrapping. I just want to ask everybody who's not speaking to mute their phone, mute their screens, because you never know when the doorbell rings or the dog barks or the phone rings. So let's begin. Thank you again for coming. And, the first question is really not an easy answer, because on a global basis, one might think it's an easy answer, but on a local basis, it could be very different depending on what part of the environment you're active in protecting. So the first question I'm going to throw out, and I'm going to start with Don Weiss. What's the biggest threat to our local environment? And again, tell us who you are and what organization you represent.
Thank you, Suzanne. My name is Don Weiss, and I'm the Director of Donor Advising. I'm a past board member and a volunteer for the New Jersey Trail Conference. So I'll get into that a little bit more after I answer the question, but I believe that the biggest problem we face locally is kind of a general problem, and it's a problem of quality of life, which stems from the quality of our drinking water, the quality of the land where we recreate, the quality of the outdoor experience that contributes to our physical and mental well-being. And so the organization I work for is involved in a number of different ways to try and address those issues. The Trail Conference was formed just over 100 years ago in 1920. And it's a group of volunteers, about 2,100 to 2,500 volunteers who are charged with building, maintaining, and protecting our access to nature, really, trails, 2,100 plus miles of them, and also with protecting the lands that they pass through. So that means preserving land for green corridors, and it also means things like protecting native plant species and protecting the land from abuse from visitors who are less than careful out there on the trails. And So we're kind of working on way too many fronts at one time, but it's a lot of fun. And you know, the more I have gotten to know the organization over years, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. There's just more and more to discover. And we couldn't do it without all our partners. And so we're really grateful to, you know, be working with a lot of the people who are on this call. We do a lot of partnering with MEVO, who helps us with volunteers and other groups as well. So I'm just thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Don. Let me go to you, Sonia, from Keep Rockland Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what you think is the biggest threat right now to our local environment.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm Sonia Cairo. I'm the director at Keep Rockland Beautiful. And Keep Rockland Beautiful is about raising awareness and empowering individuals to create sustainable communities in Rockland. And it's the biggest threat. It's hard to wrap your arms around the biggest threat because there are a number of things, waste, climate change, habitat loss. But I think as Dawn was alluding to is it's understanding our footprint, our ecological footprint, and how we affect the environment around us, how we are in sync or out of sync. What does our consumption, excess consumption, waste mean to our land and to the communities around us? And how can we learn more? And I think the threat is not understanding in general, people not really knowing how to live in balance with nature, how to understand the carrying capacity of our environment, and then what tools can they use, simple, from behaviors such as using a reusable bottle to the power they have to write to the media, to speak out, to inform, to present or back up legislation that has a lasting impact in the way we live together.
Great. Thank you. Ellen Peck, please introduce yourself and your affiliation and tell us what you think the biggest threat to our local environment is, please.
Hi, let me just adjust my phone again. Hi, my name is Ellen Peck, and I am the interim executive director at the Rockland Farm Alliance. We are located in New City, and our alliance is actually founded upon the historic farm Cropsey Farm. So we've been around for about 10 years or so, and our mission is really to educate the public directly, hands-on, hands in the dirt, both old and young, about what it means to actually grow your own food, what's the value of sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And we also really came together about 10 years ago to preserve farms in Rockland and encourage preserving more open space in the region, and as well as preserving small farms as a way to kind of consolidate and localize our food chains and our community support networks. So in a way, I've kind of just answered your question insofar as what's the biggest threat to our local environment. We do see it as twofold. We do look at the encroachment of development on open space in Rockland. It's become more and more of a pressure cooker, particularly in the last 10 years. In fact, that's really what drove us to save Cropsey. And then in turn, we've saved several other farms. But in addition to that, we've gone a little further, and that we've really encouraged the reinstitution of agricultural districts. And we've looked to try to support and champion legislation at the state level to support the small farmer. Rockland is what we call the peri-urban ring around the city, and we have tremendous pressure to develop our land in non-agricultural and non-open space purposes. So we do feel that that is the biggest challenge locally. But as it pertains to the larger issues, we also are passionate about educating the young and inviting community to come visit the farm, participate in the community supported agriculture, where you have a weekly share in local produce. And then finally, after COVID hit, we pivoted really quickly to create a new program called Project Greens, where we devoted a good portion of our greens and planted new fields expressly to provide fresh greens for local food pantries, organizations who are responding to COVID. And we see that program actually living well beyond COVID. We're doing that for the foreseeable future, because we do see this combination of open space and sustainable regenerative agriculture as being one of the key components of resilient communities, particularly during COVID, but certainly well after COVID hopefully goes away.
That's great. Thank you. Peggy Kurtz, who's representing, I think, 2 organizations this evening.
I am. So yes, I'm representing, I'm the leader of Rockland Sierra Club, and I'm one of the co-founders, along with George Patanovic and Lori Seaman, of the Rockland Water Coalition. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the aims of both. So unfortunately, for me, there simply is no question. The biggest threat locally is the threat to life on this planet, which is the climate change, the climate crisis, and that threat is imminent. We are truly heading off a cliff. We are also facing an unprecedented crisis of species extinction, which is closely related and which most people are unfortunately completely unaware of. We are radically disrupting and destroying the natural environment on which we depend. 2 years ago, the UN panel on climate change released a bombshell report stating that we had, at that time, 12 years to radically change course to avoid irreversible runaway climate catastrophe. We are truly on the precipice of the breakdown of the natural world. Even the pandemic and the string of epidemics that we've seen before that are linked to climate change and other factors that from human factors. Over the course of the last 50 years, the number of epidemics has quadrupled. Think of SARS, MERS, Ebola, Zika, even AIDS and Lyme, and these are all diseases that are viruses passed from animals, wild animals, to human beings. What's happening is that we are destroying the habitat of wildlife, and the animals that are thriving are those that thrive in degraded habitats, and they are also, unfortunately, often disease vectors. So that's a lot. In Rockland Sierra Club, we are focused on getting local and state government to take action, because we know that we can make a difference at those levels. And as grave as the threats are, the work can still nonetheless be very enormously empowering, I would say, as I'm sure is true for all of us. As a result of our work, a new renewable energy initiative launched this winter, Rockland Community Power. And through that initiative, 20,000 households transitioned to renewable energy over the course of 2 months. That's the speed and the scale and scope that we need now to move fast enough to make a difference. If your community is not already participating, please get in touch with me at rocklandclimate@gmail.com. I'll put it into the chat. We are also working hard to stop a proposal for a new frack gas power plant outside of Newburgh called Danskamer. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It is a precedent-setting case. It's not just another case. And it's urgent that we mobilize everyone to stop this proposal and to send a clear message that New York State is done with fossil fuels. We are also working to support state legislation. Just for lack of time, I won't go through that. So now I want to transition just really quickly to the Rockland Water Coalition. As many of you know, the Rockland Water Coalition is working on by the way, includes others such as Suzanne Shapiro, and if I look in Deb Munitz, and also core members, and Jeff Welch and Terry Thal. I'm sure if I go through other pages that I'll find more of you. As many of you know, we're working on the issue of the contamination of our drinking water with toxic PFAS chemicals. It is absolutely shocking that EPA has not regulated a single new chemical in drinking water in 25 to 30 years. I mean, just stunning, hard to get your mind around. Ultimately, PFAS are like lead. There are no safe levels. And also like lead, they are ubiquitous. It was not until lead was banned from gas and paint and other products that lead levels in blood began to drop. We need a ban on these highly toxic chemicals at the state and the federal level. Everyone deserves safe and healthy drinking water. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. And you got extra time because you're representing 2 organizations.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My other answers will be short.
And Deb Munitz, I think most people on this call know Deb for her hard work here in Ramapo and also as my partner at ROSA. So Deb, please introduce yourself to those who don't know you, but I can't believe there is anyone that doesn't know you.
Well, hopefully we'll record this and post this on everybody's
Exactly.
various social media and hopefully get the word out. I joined the nascent ROSA4Rockland back in October of 2010 when we were fighting the Patrick Farm. So most people know ROSA4Rockland related to that fight. We made our commitment to work on that fight, but in the process of doing that, because of our focus, which was water, which is one of the most critical environmental concerns here in Rockland County, where we are limited within our borders to our sources of water, which is fairly unique in New York State. We learned so much about the zoning and SEQRA process, the State Environmental Quality Review Act process, that we have sort of set our sights on very large precedent-setting projects. We are an environmental not-for-profit, and so we did start in that realm of zoning, but we specifically formed related to the town of Ramapo's change of their comprehensive plan to allow for radical changes in zoning. And specifically because of the process was not making sure that all of the environmental resources were accounted for in their planning. And that's been our focus since. And that focus has taken us to focusing on another large project, which a lot of people may know about from the recent papers, which was the Pascack Ridge rezoning in the Hillcrest area. That was the second attempt by the town of Ramapo to amend the comprehensive plan specifically for rezoning. There are other similar large projects afoot right now. We're sitting on another big project where, we were organized with the idea in mind that we had to take a different tact, and it was not enough to have concerned environmentalists show up and just express concern, but to learn how to speak through the language of the zoning process and the SEQRA process to be able to express ideas in the language that triggers zoning boards and planning boards and the town boards to actually force them, to look at something, react, recognize that certain parts of the processes are legally required, and then be willing to go out and get environmental experts, wetland experts. We've hired hydrologists, we've hired planners, and we've also hired lawyers, because at the end of the day, sometimes you have to fight when these municipalities don't do what you want. And which is one of the reasons that I've gotten to know Susan so well and we've become such good friends, is because, that's part of the process, and you have to be willing to take it all the way through that process. And so unfortunately, sometimes it has to go all the way to the courts. And then even then, sometimes these things actually have to go to the Court of Appeals. So like ROSA had to do that with Patrick Farm. And that was a fight that we started in 2010 that didn't resolve itself until 2018. So right now, our big issues are, focusing on comprehensive plans. And Ramapo is the largest growing population in Rockland County. Most of the volunteers live in Ramapo, although we are supported by people throughout Rockland County. And we have gotten involved in other projects throughout the county. And recently, we've participated when Suez moved their headquarters over to, I think it's the Valley Cottage area. near Lake DeForest, they were getting ready to put their gas tanks literally a couple hundred feet up on a mountain over our reservoir. And sort of the shocking thing a lot of people don't know is that the county has absolutely no jurisdiction whatsoever to be part of that review process. They literally have no jurisdiction on our water, which is one of the reasons that, ROSA also participates in the Rockland Water Coalition and gets involved in reviewing things even in Orange County with respect to the Ramapo River, because there's a lot of things upstream that affect us downstream. So, we have a really kind of very broad, things that we're looking at, but, the general, thrust is how do you participate and get the word out as early in the process to as many people as possible, and how to inform and gather information to help empower people to participate in these processes and to help bring some sanity back to the process. Sometimes that means slowing it down. It means bringing in experts, and it means, enforcing a review. And we're doing all of that on a number of things. The town is very active right now. They're going to be passing something on Wednesday related to Sloatsburg, which is our big open. Western Ramapo is very forested. That's where our lowest zoning is. So the Jehovah's Witnesses have bought a very large tract. They'll probably accept that DES this Wednesday. Recently, Village of New Hempstead, small, they just passed a comprehensive plan without any seeker review, and then they passed a bunch of rezoning without seeker review. So there are a lot of things that we are tracking and involved in, and we can use many more volunteers and supporters to help us.
We're going to get to some of that.
We'll get to all that later. And the last thing I just want to mention is we also track open space, which is a big issue here in Ramapo, where one of the best things I can say about Christopher St. Lawrence is he went and purchased a lot of open space in the past. And I can say that towards the end, before he was arrested, he was busy selling it off left, right, and center, and the town of Ramapo, unfortunately, is continuing to do that. So that is another thing that we've been following. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Deb. You'll get some more time in a minute. Violet Reed, please tell everybody who you are and what organization you represent. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, classic. Hi, everyone. My name is Violet Reed, and I am the Executive Director of MEVO, or the Mahwah Environmental Volunteers Organization, and we are a grassroots environmental not-for-profit that operates primarily in Mahwah, New Jersey, but we also do work in Rockland County, primarily through the Rockland Conservation Service Course. So we help to train and work with our interns all summer in conjunction with the Rockland Youth Bureau. And, I think that the most pressing environmental issue we're facing right now in correlation to our work is environmental apathy. So I think a lot of people have touched on that, but this disconnection, this wall between, we are part of nature, we are, part of the ecosystem. Dirt is not scary. You can touch a worm. Your carrot comes from the soil. It doesn't just appear at the supermarket. And our programs are really based on hands-on work. So get to the farm, get your hands in the dirt, go up to Stag Hill, where there's a lot of illegal dumping. So over 60 years of illegal dumping up there. I was just surveying new sites. There's still more dumping. We've been cleaning up for a decade. So go and help pull those cars out of the forest, grab those tires, go on the trails. We partner with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, learn how to build, maintain, repair trails. This is all really hard work. But I think once that the work is done, the volunteers mobilize, they realize that, oh, okay, dirt isn't scary. It feels really good to move my body towards an environmental, effort. It feels really good to meet people, who are like-minded, who care for the earth, or maybe have been going through similar life paths, unsure about nature, now slowly moving into it. I think for a lot of people, for a lot of humans, it's, inside is safe, outside is a little bit unknown. There's scary things, there's animals have disease, there's poison ivy can, be itchy. And we're youth led. So we're trying to bring in the next generation of environmental leaders through our spring, summer, and fall internships, through our volunteer programs, which usually bring in a lot of high school, middle school, college students, but we take individuals, of course, of all ages. And, these are the people who are now going to be inheriting permitting our issues, our climate issues, our trash issues, our loss of open space issues. So how can we train really competent, strong environmental leaders who, maybe they are working, with a corporation to improve the corporation's environmental practices, but maybe they are lobbying, or maybe they really are farming. So farming is an environmental act for us. So through our programs, our Stag Hill Trash Can program, trail building, natural beekeeping and farming, we're working to combat that environmental apathy.
That's great, Violet. Thank you so much. And we'll get to more of that in a minute. Lori Seaman, please tell everyone who you are and what organization you're representing this evening.
Thank you so much, Suzanne and Susan. I'm here representing Strawtown Art and Garden Studio. It's an environmental arts-based education outfit that I found that is sort of an artisan offering about 20 some years ago. And we're now a nonprofit. And Joanna Dickey's on the call. I'm glad to see her. She's been my working partner out in the field for 18 years. And the just the dirt time we have together and the stream time, has us offering this really exponential offering. I really want to say, listening to this, I just feel like such a lucky person in the midst of all the problems. Because what I learned from working with children outdoors, a hands-on learning, almost no books, the nature is our teacher, I bring into the water advocacy and activism. And what I learned there, I bring back into the education program. So I feel like I always have somewhere to go with what I'm experiencing. And this full circle model of education into advocacy that starts with a child at a puddle and goes to the governor's office is what we do. And 2 years ago, I started a formal education training for others, like an open door training. I've been teaching people to work with us in our summer programs and after school programs for 20 years, camps. But now we're teaching others. And it's fantastic. I didn't know if I would really even like it because I like working with young people most. Because they're so alive and sensorial and they just so want to know how the world works. You know what I mean, right? And so, but I loved it. I've taken 2 groups through. So far, Joanne and I have taken 50 facilitator, educator, parents, activists, naturalists. It's a mixed group through our training. And that's become my primary mission. I'm going to still maintain a core group of programs as our lab. But I've been an education researcher for 20 years, and I think I have a really winning model for education. It combines everything you all know that I'm up to, including being at town hall. You got to figure out who amongst you is going to, carry forth on what. We have a very organized system, and it comes down to getting children or young people or whoever oriented. I feel people are just not oriented. It goes with all the apathy and what we're talking about. So we have 3 leading questions that we carry. I'll share them with you. Where are we? And all the different ways you can answer that question. Anything you can think of brings us together. Who are we here with? And we teach that the clouds are a who, every being. So it is spiritual ecology. And then how are we all doing together? And those 3 questions are the basis for our environmental work as well as our education. And we have a model. We don't have a lot going on through Strawtown's door for public right now, except for that we're asking for public support to help fund facilitators to come to these trainings, to send people our way, whether they're organizations. Joanne and I received an NEA grant last year, and it was for stream education for Haverstraw youth. We do a lot of work up there, but because of COVID, we remodeled it, and we now call it the Inhabit Art program. We may stick with that name, Inhabit Art.
Well,
And
that's
we're working with youth from the Haverstraw Center and the Martin Luther King Center, the 3 teams of us. Their youth leaders came through our teacher training, and we now have them outside the buildings on field trips. We took 12 girls from Haverstraw Center up to Minnesango Creek the other day. And, kids who were afraid to go were saying, like, I want to do this. Happens in 5 hours.
That's
So
great.
how do we create that and then make sure there's a chain of life of adults ready to receive and guide these children through life so there is no apathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. That's fantastic. I want to join.
Please do.
Jim Elling, am I saying your last name
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. Thank you. My name is Jim Elling. I am the current chair of the Sparkill Creek Watershed Alliance. And before I get started, I just want to let everybody know, in case they don't, Lori started this back in 2010, and Joanna was right there with her. Thank you very much. Well, I'm looking at this very locally. It's the health of the Hudson River that I'm most concerned with. I tend to think locally, and because of trying to make the Hudson River healthier, the Alliance got involved with Riverkeeper and their monitoring program looking for Enterococcus. So we're working on the Sparkill. Now, our group, through all the hard work of everybody, has made some significant progress as far as monitoring is concerned. We've done Entero for 10 years. We're starting our 11th year. We're getting a name for ourselves, and that's through all the good work of everybody who's been involved in it. But I'd say up and down the Hudson River, we're leaders as far as getting closer to finding out why there's bacteria in the Sparkill. And that affects the Hudson, of course. There are other things we're doing, but I just found out today that we're going to switch our focus from looking for Enterococcus, and we're going to start looking for E. coli in the creek, because the DEC is more apt to pay attention to that data. And, you know, I'm one for, I suppose, global warming is going to naturally have an effect on the Hudson River. But I tend to deal in my own backyard. I like to figure out things, what's going on in my own backyard, and that's the Sparkill Creek. I don't have what you might say a worldview environmentally like a lot of you do, but I do care about water. So my answers tend to be short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That's great. And that's what this is all about. This is a local event. So the fact that it is in your backyard is really important, because we have to look locally as well as globally. But local, it starts here, right? It all starts here. And that brings me perfectly to George Patanovic, who started an organization in his backyard. George, why don't you introduce yourself?
Suzanne. George Patanovic, president of the Student Action Committee for the Environment that started in the 1990s. We're 31 years old this year. The reasons why we started, I think, are pretty much the same as the reasons that we have now for being involved. And that is to encourage people to become engaged in the process in their community, to become involved citizens, attending planning board meetings and town board meetings and zoning board meetings. And I think the biggest threat, I agree with everything I've heard in terms of environmental threats that were mentioned. But I think the biggest threat is the threat to our sense of community, of place, that people have more power than sometimes they think to be involved. We've talked about these things in the past, where the individual can make a big difference. And I still believe that. There is apathy out there, yes, as was mentioned. But a part of it is also information and feeling invited into the process. Something that big obstacles is the way government sometimes, in terms of the open meetings law and the freedom of information law, which we use, to get people to go to meetings, but also to get the documents that are necessary to understand the facts. We've always been big on advocacy and education, get the understanding of the issues, get the understanding of the facts, and then reach your conclusion. But I find government to be almost adverse to that in many ways, and try to undermine the public's involvement. Very short notices sometimes on meetings, agendas that are not completely explained. Doing things to undermine and subvert that effort. And I see that as being almost really undemocratic, really. And I guess I feel that I'm feeling that way at this point, that people have to exercise their democracy if they want to have a government that's involving the people. And that's always been Space's focus. And we have some specific issues I can just mention briefly right now. It's the people, many people 64 condo units being built on our river, and there's a lot of outstanding issues in terms of access and environmental issues that we feel the town is avoiding, and yet they're headed with this project, high density housing in an area that's very inaccessible. And the Letchworth property, a sale where the town decided to sell the property, even though the public had exercised its right to sign petitions and force a permissive referendum, but the supervisor went ahead and sold the property. Besides that, I see that as really objectionable. So this is the issue. The issue is public involvement, I think, and I'd like to see more people realize their part in the process and to have local government. I think this is something that affects all of us on all the issues that we're involved in. I guess I'd like to see that message put forward for us to in the future. That's all I can just say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. And we have two more people that I want to get to, and I'm going to start with Hugh, and then I'm going to go to Susan, and then we're going to open it up to the public, because a lot of you have already answered the second question, which was how can people engage with your group? And we can get into that, but we're running close to time. So Hugh, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what organization you represent?
Thank you very much. I'm Hugh Carolla. I'm the program director at Hackensack Riverkeeper. Hackensack Riverkeeper is like Hudson Riverkeeper, a member of Waterkeeper Alliance. Hackensack Riverkeeper was founded in 1997 by my boss, Captain Bill Sheehan. I get involved mainly in environmental education and outreach and some policy work, etc. You can find out all about us at hackensackriverkeeper.org. Okay, we've been mostly working by and large in New Jersey because of good people like you who are really carrying the torch and doing the work, doing the really good work up in Rockland County. My hat's off to you. You guys are the best. You really, really are. And but now that things are a little bit better down here, a little bit lighter down here, please understand that we are a resource for you. I had a recent long conversation with Jim Elling very recently. In the past, we've done some partnering with Mevo and with KRB. Again, all you guys are just awesome. Keep up the good work, like you need me to tell you. Very simple. The problem that I see it to our environment is both ignorance and willful ignorance. Every Trump sign you saw in Rockland County, every Trump sign I saw in Upper Bergen County, okay, is a symbol, is a symptom of the problem. The problem is ignorance. The problem is people who do not care one whit about the environment. They don't care about clean water unless it comes out of their tap. They don't care about clean air. They don't care about wildlife. They don't care about habitat. They do not care. They're short-sighted. They care about tomorrow's tax revenues. They care about tomorrow's ratables, and that's it. That is basically what I refer to as the other side. And everything everybody has talked about is absolutely true. I say amen to everything. But at the bottom, at the heart of it, at the center of it all, is the fact that there are people that have fundamentally, diametrically opposed view of the environment, of nature, and of our place in nature. So that's the end of my sermon, and we can carry on. I'm
Thank you,
not
Hugh.
that crazy, so it's been a long day of Zooms, boys and girls. Long day of Zooms.
So let me wrap up introducing the partners by now going back to my co-MC, Susan Shapiro, because she wants to talk about some of the organizations that she represents on topic right now, Indian Point.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. All these amazing organizations are here representing the hard work that everyone has put into protecting Rockland County, our environment, and especially our water resources. This is an amazing group of people. And besides, as Suzanne said, being the co-host with her tonight, I'm also here representing the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition. And we, along with you and many other coalition members, we have all done something amazing. We have something to, take a pause and pat ourselves on the back for a second. We finally succeeded in closing Indian Point. This Friday will be the last day that dangerous, leaking, physically compromised reactors will be closed permanently, forever.
Yes.
And, which is a big thing. And it just shows, that how a small group of dedicated, caring people can really change the world. And each one of these groups here tonight are those small groups that really make a difference. And, nuclear energy has been a big issue here in Rockland County because of Indian Point. And the issue of climate change, there are many people who go around saying, well, let's use nuclear to solve the solution for climate change. And that is so wrong-headed for a variety of reasons, economic, but mostly in terms of straight environmental. Nuclear energy is a climate change accelerator, probably one of the most rapid climate change accelerators. What's happening right now, I want to just take a moment to talk about Fukushima. They're dumping carbon-14 into the ocean, which is going to cause a heat carbon sink that's going to melt the ice caps more rapidly than any carbon that's being put into the air. So it's super dangerous. And here at Indian Point, we have to continue working, all of us together, because over 22,000 tons of radioactive nuclear waste is going to stay here permanently. No matter what they try to say, that they're going to ship it off to New Mexico, to indigenous tribal lands. That's never going to happen. That's not been approved. New Mexico's against it. The Dene people are against it. And there's no transportation to get it there. So the reality is we have to continue working to make sure that waste is protected from getting into the Hudson River and into our drinking water supply and into our groundwater. So all of us have to continue fighting. And now it's once again been thrown back to the PSC, the nuclear issue, which they really have no knowledge or jurisdiction over, but that's where it's going. And what we have to fight for, this is the fight right now, is we need a citizens advisory board that will continue to oversee this waste. This waste isn't going anywhere for thousands of years, and it needs to be protected properly. And the historical and institutional memory of the public is much greater than that of elected officials who come and go. And so that's what we're fighting for. The comments are due April 28th this week also to the PSC to ask for this citizens advisory board, which really needs to happen. So basically, I want to thank all of you for being here. And, it's our water that we have to protect. We protect the water, we protect the air. We protect the water, we protect the land. We protect the water, we protect the people and the species that are being exterminated. So please, all of us, let's keep working together. This is such an amazing group. Rockland County is really lucky to have all of you fighting individually and together for all the different issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And that's congratulations. I know you've worked on this for as long as I've known you. And let me open this up for a minute because I want the folks who are joining us to be able to ask some questions. And then I will ask a final question. We have just really a little bit over 10 minutes left. So anyone out there have a question?
I don't.
I'm looking for a hand raise. Matthew, do you see any hands being raised? Because I don't see the little hand raising icon.
Jackie
Dressler.
Jackie raising a hand.
Oh, Jackie? Jackie?
Hi, I so appreciate everyone being here. It's such a marvelous gathering of people and organizations, and we're all fighters. My biggest pressing concern is the overdevelopment issue here in Rockland County and the overuse of our natural resources. And I'm just wondering about more of our groups bonding together over that, the way we kind of did with the Indian Point people and the AIM pipeline, how we finally came together on like a greater issue there. So I'm just wondering because, you all are, you're doing such great fighting up in Ramapo. I've been at many of the meetings there, but we're having this horrible issue down here in Clarkstown. And I know we have Coupon, but I'm just wondering, like we've come to some of your meetings, if you guys can come to some of ours, because it's getting so out of hand. And I'm also very concerned about the land up on the ridge, the West Hook Mountain, and the takeover by, a person for his own development, for his own use of parkland. It's very concerning to me because, we are a small county and we only have so many resources. And I don't see how water can possibly supply all of the development that is being intended.
I'm actually going to ask Susan to try to answer that as succinctly as possible because there are things that we're working on that affect the water supply and how it gets doled out. So we're hoping that we can come up with some solutions, Jackie.
Mhm.
And if you want to put in any information about your meetings and when you're having them, you can do it in the chat.
We just, my sister and I just go to every town board meeting and say no, and we tell Suez, give the people trees. You're multi-billion dollar company. What are you jerking around people for? But it's just we're being inundated in Rockland, just the way Ramapo's been inundated, and we just need some support.
We all, everyone has to support one another, because this is Rockland is under attack, as somebody earlier said, because of our closeness to New York City, and because of many people do not understand the limitations of Rockland's resources, which is water. And we are meeting with the coalition. Everyone's trying to figure out a solution right now. There's a lot of effort being put into how do we get control of this precious resource to protect the land and the environment. And we don't have an easy solution. We don't have an easy answer to it, but I think if we all put our heads together, we'll come up with the right answer and the right solution for it. And Peggy has something to say. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. So we're all talking, I mean, many of us are in the Rockland Water Coalition, so we've been talking about this issue for a long time. I'm afraid we don't all always agree. It's a coalition, not, but it's my firm belief that there just is something. I mean, both Susan and Deb mentioned the limits of our aquifers, and it just, there used to be something that people talked about called the carrying capacity of our resources. Right. There just is a limit to our natural resources, and specifically to our water. We need to respect that. We need to, it's all about overdevelopment. It's about watershed. We need a watershed protection plan that really engages not only Ramapo and Rockland communities, but also Orange County, because part of our water some of our water does come from Orange County. So please, reach out to us. There's many of us here in the Rockland Water Coalition, and get involved with this, because we really need a watershed protection planning approach as well as water conservation. It's a big issue, and we need the county to really pay attention to it. I would say we need the county executive really to, kind of see this as a priority, to understand it as a priority.
What about a water authority?
That's what we're talking
about. We're talking about that more now.
We also probably need a carve out for Rockland County as a unique water situation on a state level, so that we're exempted from certain state issues, so that we can protect our water. So we also need our state representatives to be engaged in this.
I see Deb Munitz, you have your hand up?
Yeah, one of the points that I'd like to make to Jackie, and I think to everybody else who's here, is we do need the county. And one of the things that everyone has to recognize is we need to ask for very concrete things. And so there's some big things that we're looking at that are very complicated, and we're talking amongst ourselves because we're still trying to understand it. And then there are some other things. I know Susan and I have spoken to the county, and one of the biggest issues that we have challenged county representatives is to get more involved in the beginning of the development process, which is that State Environmental Quality Review Act portion of it, getting involved in seeker. And I know, one thing I can say is sometimes if you can put something simple in front of the county, they can and will act on it. And I think it's a challenge to all of us to think through some of the simple things. And I know that one of my kind of persistent pushes has been to get the Department of Health to take the responsibility for tracking all development projects. They used to do it, and they have stopped doing it as of 2018 with respect to water. And I think that this is absolutely 100% one of the singularly most important things that we can do that's very easy. It's not a big push. It's not a big ask. And right now the town of Ramapo is doing their town-wide existing plan. And I know I've been pushing for it to be part of that town-wide existing plan. And I think that when this thing comes, when this moves forward and there are public hearings, this is singularly one of the things that in every single town, Stony Point, Clarkstown, all of the towns, we all have to consistently go to our town planning departments and say, we need people within each town tracking what is being approved. And that has to be consolidated at a county level so that we can see it, because I think we all fear that there's something happening, but we don't see it. And I think the problem is that very few people, including the towns in the county, are seeing it the way we feel it's happening. And I think we have to actually get the data on this. Thanks.
Great
The
idea.
other big important thing that we all should get behind is there's a bill right now in New York State to protect our wetlands. Right now, the DEC only protects wetlands over 12.6 acres. We need them to protect wetlands over an acre. And there's a bill that's in the state, which Deb can give you the number because I forgot what the number is, but we need to get everyone in Rockland focused on that. That will affect our region more. It will protect our lands more than almost anything else one thing that we can do.
And who's ever, even we have limited number of participants this evening, but if each person is interested in helping, look at the chat. Susan, put that information in there about the DEC if you could, then tell 10 of your neighbors, and then ask 10 of your neighbors to tell 10 of their friends in the county, and so on and so on. And that's how we're going to grow this evening into a much bigger and more positive action for our environment. I just want to ask a quick question of Don. How has, you mentioned quality of life, right? That's an issue that was the top of the agenda for you in terms of the biggest threat to our local environment. How has COVID impacted the quality of the trails? I've been hiking a lot longer than just the last year, but suddenly I'm seeing all of these new faces, and they're coming from the city, and they're coming even from the county, people that never walked before. How has that impacted the work that you guys are doing?
It's had a pretty profound impact, and it's hit us in a few different kinds of ways. I mean, the first and most obvious issue is erosion and degradation of the trails themselves, and that in turn leads to problems with water quality. So the elephant in the room for us has been, we've got these wonderful 2,100 miles of trails, but it's like the roads and bridges in America. The infrastructure will age and will fail, and add another, double the population of people using the trails. And that's a big one. The other issue is that people are, not prepared, not coming with proper maps. And so they're going off trail, they're getting lost, or they're following some app that, really isn't an authoritative app. And so they're affecting the native plant life, they're affecting the wildlife. Those types of things. So the biggest thing that we're trying to do is to educate the public through trail stewards at high impact areas like Bear Mountain and Breakneck Ridge and places like that. Through using our communication channels to educate the public, and through volunteerism, so that we can fix the problems. And also by volunteerism, I also mean things like our conservation committee, which is charged with saving lands and protecting them so that they don't become all the trails are not just overused.
Education is a great way to phrase it, and I know that Lori, for instance, that's part of her mandate of what she's doing in Strawtown. I wanted to ask Sonia, because I wrote down the word education, and I was going to bring it back to Sonia. For every action, there's a reaction, right? So as development and population increase, as more people come to visit our community, because we do have Harriman State Park as part of Rockland County, I notice it, and I certainly assume everyone else on this meeting notices it. The trash seems to just keep building up, right? I can't drive down 202 without spotting plastic everywhere. And for me, that's my pet peeve, besides everything else that I work on with Rosa and keeping Rivertown alive. Seeing trash at the side of the road drives me bonkers. And I don't understand why. If somebody walks off their driveway and they see something either on their property or maybe even just across the street, they don't pick it up. How do we get people, adults, because I know you work a lot with the kids, Sonia, in the schools. How do we get adults to see it and actually take the time to pick it up?
I think, there's a saying, trash begets trash. So one of the problems is that when people see trash along the sides of the roads and they don't inherently have a compass that they were raised with, it's easier for them to toss it because it looks like, well, everybody else is doing it. And so I think really the key is the youth that we talk to, because they go home and once their fire's ignited, they make it very difficult for the adults in their households to not do the right thing. And we hear stories about that all the time. And how parents tell us how they've been admonished on several occasions for the not just for littering, but for when we go into the schools and we talk to them about reducing, water consumption, or, separating their trash, the recyclables, whatever it is. So I think that we can inspire people when we show them, when we're out and they see us cleaning up and they see people doing the right thing. It helps them to do that. We actually have a litter bug report program that we partnered with a while ago, and it's still going, but we're not publicizing it as much as we should. It's a litter bug warning letter. And
that's good.
That is fine. You can write down, we have litter bug pads if you want, or you can do it online. And if you see someone throwing something out of their car, you can report it. We give it to the sheriff, they get a letter. So, there's a combination of admonishing people and also sort of giving them the ability to see just what a world would look like without that around them. And for the kids, the litter is a wonderful opportunity. It's a gateway to talking about the perils of too much consumption, which we're, I guess they called it conspicuous at one time. It's like, we're all conspicuous.
There's a great film that we showed at one of the earlier Wild and Scenics called The Story of Stuff.
Yes.
And you can all watch it, and it's fantastic. I want to just say that I know that water is one of the main issues for all of us, and it will continue to be. And each one of us, whether it is the trails, Mevo, Lori, Hugh, Sonia, Peggy, Debbie, Ellen, Susan, it all comes back down to water, right? In a sense. And you educated me, Sonia, about if you look at trash on the side of the road, eventually that's going to wind up in some stream bed.
Right.
And now we're affecting our water. And
the DEC says that stormwater runoff is one of the biggest culprits to pollution in our waterways. And to this day, I've been doing this now for like 20 years. And I think, okay, I've informed everybody that our storm drains are not sewers, and that water in fact is going straight into our waterway. And 90% of the people in the room still do not know that those don't lead to sewage treatment plants. So
I have an idea for a film. We'll talk about it offline. I just want to, we have to wrap this, guys. So this is like a power round of words. Let's see if we can make it work. I'm going to go call out your name, and then you're going to tell me either in one short word or one short sentence, short being the optimal word here, what represents the biggest difference in improving our local environment. Okay, I'm starting with Susan, even though you're my co-host. I'm starting with you.
I say follow the water and protect it. And that has proven to be a big thing here.
Deb.
Just build email networks and make sure that people are not afraid to, step up and get involved.
Peggy.
Even though you said local, I'm still going with climate change because that affects everything else. The terrible but unavoidable task of our generation is to turn around an absolutely existential climate crisis. Start anywhere, join with others, and you can make a difference.
Ellen.
I would say find any way you can to combine the lived experience with education.
Sonia.
Total agreement. I'm gonna come back to you. Inspire the youth and do it through that hands-on education where they really get true meaning out of what they're feeling and seeing.
Violet. Oh, you're muted.
Small solutions that can be sustained and are impactful in our local community.
Perfect. And Lori.
I say the power of friendship. I tell the kids that that's how we defeated desalination. That was our superpower. You need to cultivate friendships and tend them and make sure we all keep going and growing.
That's fantastic. I love that answer. Thank you. Jim?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The progress we make is what we learn.
That's very well said. We have to use that as a quote. That's fantastic. George?
Ask questions, become informed, and take action in your community. Get involved.
Don?
Connect people with nature so they'll fall in love with it and want to protect it.
That's fantastic. Okay, everyone. That was,
Hugh.
oh, I'm so sorry, Hugh.
That's all right. I'm sure the Jersey boy, right? Okay. Empower people to take ownership of their waterways and their wetlands and their watersheds.
So educate, water, and come together. And guess what? We'll all create a network of friends who really care. And I think that's what we've done this evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been really wonderful.
Okay.
Matthew will be posting the recorded version on the archive of rivertownfilm.org's website. Anybody else who needs information and hasn't gotten it from the chat, please go to the partner page on suffernfilmfest.com or rivertownfilm.org for this event, and you will see the names of the partners, and everybody will be able to get in touch. Thank you again, and I'll see you all soon.
Oh, how beautiful.
Thank
this
you.
is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Ciao. Okay.